Hi and welcome to the running channel. I'm Sarah and today I'll be giving you all the tips you need in order to step up to run an ultra distance. Whether you've run 26.2 miles and thought what's next, or if you've heard of an ultra marathon and are wondering if you could take one on, I'll be giving you all the information you need to know from training to fueling and kit with the help of our friends at DHB. Also stay tuned right to the end as I'll be giving you a top tip for tackling your first ultra. Before we get stuck in though, please do hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you get notified when we release new videos all about running, which we do every week. So how do you train to run an ultra? There are 4 key points to this one: how long it will take, goal setting, the terrain that you'll be running on, and the actual training itself. If you're looking at targeting an ultra, then you need to think about how long you're going to give yourself before the event, be it real or virtual. Your current level of fitness, the distance of the ultra, and your goal will all determine how long you need to give yourself to train. We're going to assume that you've got a good base level of fitness and you've tackled a marathon before, so as a really rough guide, we would suggest 12 to 16 weeks. Have a think about your goal for the race. Do you want to just finish? Do you want to finish in a certain time? When setting your goal though, remember that no 2 ultras are the same. Weather conditions, elevation and terrain will all play a part. So just because you've run one 50k race doesn't mean that you should set the same goal for the next one if it's on a completely different terrain with different levels of elevation as well. Also remember that some races might have cut-off points, either at aid stations or at different points throughout the race. So make sure to check that in advance of signing up to make sure the race is within your capability. Whilst we're talking about terrain and elevation, it's important to factor that into your training as well. Is your ultra on the road or is it on the trails with lots of elevation? Either way, you're going to want to replicate those conditions in your training, which we'll come on to a little bit later in this video. And then there's the actual training itself. How much and how often? Training for an ultra should be a bit like training for a marathon, and your training should include a mixture of different sessions. Your key session though is going to be those long runs or getting time on feet. A good way to do this, especially if your goal is to finish rather than finish in a particular time, is to do your long runs to time. So going out for 3 or 4 hours isn't unusual in ultra training. Remember though that this doesn't have to be 3 hours of solid running. It can be a mixture of running and walking, or stopping for breaks, to eat some snacks, or maybe to take a picture. You may also want to consider factoring in some back-to-back long runs in your training. So going out one day and running for a couple of hours, and then going out the next day and also running for a couple of hours. The benefit of this is you go into that second day feeling tired and depleted, and so you practice running on tired legs. Do bear in mind though that back-to-back long runs are very demanding on your body. It's going to take you longer to recover, and running whilst fatigued does put you at a higher risk of injury. There's also family life and other commitments to bear in mind too. If you work all the way throughout the week, do you have enough time at the weekends to devote a big chunk of time to your training? Now you may need to rethink the way you fuel currently. For some ultra runners, this is where the option of a high-fat, low-carb diet comes in, aiming to improve the body's adaptation for using fat as fuel and becoming less reliant on carbohydrates. For other ultra runners though, just as you would take on extra carbohydrates during a marathon to top up your glycogen stores, the same can be said for running ultra distances. If you roughly take on 25 to 60 grams of carbs per hour after the first hour of running your marathon, then that roughly equates to 1 to 2.5 gels. Multiply that by 6 or 7 hours of running and you're looking at taking on a lot of gels. So for your ultra marathon, you may want to look at taking on real food, either as an alternative to gels or alongside them. Some of the Running Channel team's top favourite ultra snacks include peanuts or peanut butter, salty boiled new potatoes, dried fruit and homemade energy balls or bars. Now that might sound like a great menu for a day out. In fact, Anna often refers to her ultras as all-day picnics. You're going to want to play around with what works for you and your stomach, what you might fancy on the day, what you can carry and what can help replenish the calories that you'll lose whilst out on the run. Remember that you can also get calories and carbohydrates through sports drinks, which will also most likely contain electrolytes to help you replenish the salt lost through sweat whilst you're running. So having a sachet that you can add to your water bottle whilst on the run is a great way of having to not purely focus on eating whilst you're running. Do practice eating whilst on your long runs in training, and practice with what you're going to use in the race itself. Remember, nothing new on race day. You might find that having to eat whole foods on your run rather than gels means that you have to slow down a bit or maybe even stop whilst you're running. For your bottom half, it's good to look at shorts and tights which are snag resistant. Nothing worse than ripping a hole in your kit on a tree branch during a slightly more adventurous ultra. Look for quick drying fabrics too. And on a lot of shorts and tights, you'll find little storage pockets, great for stashing a gel to consume whilst out on the run. You might be thinking about getting a vest for your ultra. Vests which can carry both bladder packs and bottles are going to be great, especially if you've got a long time between aid stations. It's always better to carry too much with you rather than run the risk of running out. Your vest might also have pole holders on them, great for holding your poles when you don't need them, but also easily accessible for the steeper climbs. Pockets are definitely going to be your friend, and you can never have too many. As mentioned before, soft flasks and bladder packs are both commonly used during ultras. Soft flasks sit in the front of your vest in pockets and can either come with short straws so that you take it out and drink from it, or you can get longer straws as well. Bladders sit in the back of the vest with this long tube which comes round the front so you can drink from it whilst on the go. Everyone has their own preference, and so it's good to experiment with what you prefer during training. The type of shoes that you wear for your ultra will depend on the terrain that you're running on. So if your ultra is on the track, you probably won't need trail shoes. So we won't go into too much details about shoes here. But the one thing to bear in mind though is you definitely need to be wearing whatever shoes you're going to wear out on your long runs in training. Nothing new on race day. Another key piece of kit for your ultra is socks. You definitely know you're going to be on your feet for a long time, so having a good pair of comfy socks to keep your feet dry and warm is a must. If you know your ultra is going to be cold, then look for socks which have wool in them to help keep your feet nice and warm. Also look for socks that don't have too many seams or bits that could rub your feet, and are also breathable and wick away sweat to keep your feet nice and dry. Also, when choosing the kit for your ultra, it's worth considering the weather conditions. Is it going to be cold enough that you might need gloves, or do you need a hat to keep the rain off, or to keep you warm and dry if it's going to be cold? Definitely have a look at the weather conditions for your ultra when choosing your kit. Don't get caught out before your event. Make sure you check whether the event has a mandatory kit list. This could include items like a first aid kit, a head torch with spare batteries, or waterproof trousers. Definitely check this in advance of turning up, because the worst thing to happen would be to put in all of the training, turn up only to get turned away because you don't have the right kit. The main thing for training for ultras is getting time on feet. So where do you even begin to start with key workouts? Well, those long, slow runs are going to be a good place to start. How long your ultra is will dictate your pace and how long your distances are, but be sensible with how much you increase each week. So 10% is a good margin to work off. So if you've done 20 miles one week, then do 22 the next. Unless you're desperate to go for a certain time, the goal of these long, slow runs should be to complete them and get some practice in at your fueling and with your gear. Hill workouts will help your training whether your ultra is somewhere flat like on a track or up in the mountains. They help to increase your strength and stamina, and will also help to increase your VO2 max. There are lots of different ways to implement hill workouts into your training, some of which I'll go through now. You can do short hill reps. Find a hill that takes around 45 to 90 seconds to run up. Focus on good form, a strong core, and use your arms to power up. Then jog back down as a recovery. Start with 4 to 6 hill reps and build up to 12 to 14. You can also try longer hill reps, which will help to improve your lactate threshold. Find a hill that takes 90 seconds to 3 minutes to jog up. You're going to want to knock some time off your pace compared to your ascents on the shorter hill reps. Focus on good form to help get you up that hill, and then jog back down as a recover. Start with 4 to 6 reps and then build up to 8 to 12 depending on the length of the hill. Or you can build your hills into a longer run. So use any hills on your route and sprint up them, and then use the downhills and flats as active recovery. Don't forget the downhills either. If you're not used to long periods of descent, then it can come to quite a shock to your body, with lots of ultra runners picking up injuries in their quads and their knees after long periods of descent. And when it actually comes to race day itself, don't be afraid to walk the uphills. There's no rules against it. The final key workout for your ultra training might be a surprising one: speed work. Mixing up all of these different elements in your training will help you not get into a one-pace rut. Speed work for ultra training can often look like longer intervals. Carla Molinaro, who holds the record for running the length of Britain, often does 4x5k as her speed work session. Now, the 5ks aren't at your actual 5k race pace, they'd be slightly slower. And it's important to sensibly build up to this as well. It might be better to start doing 1k reps and then build up to the 5k reps, like in Carla's session. As I said at the start, we're going to finish off with a top tip for tackling your first ultra, and that is that mindset can be just as powerful a tool in your training armoury as the running itself. You're going to be spending a lot of hours running, often with your own thoughts and by yourself, so it's important to have a good positive mindset and mantras and positive self-talk that you can draw upon in the race. There might be certain points that you think you can't carry on, and so building that positive mindset in training and tools to help get you through can be really important. You're tougher than you think you are, and you can do it. So hopefully that's given you lots of tips for tackling your first ultra. Have we convinced you to give one a go, or did we miss anything else out? Let us know in the comments below, and we will see you next time on the Running Channel.